we kind of try to, or we kind of have this idea that enterprise versus retail is this big divide. And that maybe that's a sentiment that the community feels, is that Hedera is enterprise focused and they're not retail focused, and all of their resources are going into enterprise. And the thing that I've learned, and this is talking to people from all over, even inside of Swirls, is that enterprise is actually just the same as retail in terms of how they adopt technology, except that they're just much slower,
Right.
far, far slower. But if they see cool things being built on the network, if they see adoption and users on the network, they are more likely to build on us, just like any retail project is more likely to build on us, right? If somebody makes a coffee coffee-based startup where they're selling coffee online for HBAR, right? And you can stake that coffee coin. I'm talking about a specific project actually called Kona, because that guy is great and he's just doing it out of his love for Hedera. But he sells coffee and he roasts it in Hawaii, and he is like he just I just put an order into him and I get coffee from Hawaii, and it's fantastic. And he's in the HBAR community. And someone can look at that project and say like, well, okay, here's a model of how I can sell my real world asset and also do something in the token space that is just like actually very simple. And then an enterprise comes in and says, okay, well, then here's this other retail project that has integrated with WordPress, and now you can just like have a store online that you can buy using HTS tokens, and you don't have to worry about whatever random things, right? How can we do that? Or points, the point system that Patches made with HTS 20, I'm looking into that now too. That takes away the risk of all of the speculation and stuff, because there's no token behind it, and that's very attractive to legal sensitive enterprise teams. These are all retail things that show what you can do on the network. And guess what? Enterprise has retail users too, right? They touch retail. It's not just people in a server scanning barcodes all day in an enterprise format, right? You've got Starbucks, you've got Nike, you've got NBA, Top Shot, that are all doing retail facing apps. And those are enterprise projects, right? Those are enterprise companies that are looking into Web3. And how do you attract them onto your network? You attract them by having retail activity. No one's going to build on Hedera if they don't see that anybody's using it. Like, why would you? It doesn't make any sense, right? So enterprise and retail, actually quite similar. The players are different. The needs are different because they think much larger and they're much slower. They're much conservative. But you're going to attract somebody in the enterprise space by welcoming them into the community, by being excited, by showing them this is so cool. And then they can go back to their teams and disseminate that into their companies, instead of, oh, and here's just another platform XYZ that does this for you, except it's a little bit more complicated and more expensive because it's not Web2, right? So yeah, we're definitely on a good track here, and just pushing this vibe of innovation and excitement and building, I think is really the best thing as a community that we can do.
100%. And I think you hit on something really important where I think, the biggest myth in this ecosystem right now is it's this choice between enterprise and retail. And I was on a Spaces a while ago, just listening into Spaces that Charles, the president of Hedera, was on. And he was asked the question, what are we going to see first in Hedera, retail adoption or enterprise adoption? And this is recorded Spaces, you can go and listen to it and find out. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but he said something to the effect of, retail is required to get enterprise, right? Yeah. And he really explained that in his history. And I mean, you mentioned a few, like Nike and a few places that I think he actually was at. So he understands, I think, both ends. And what he's saying is like how this works is it is these small startups, these small projects, retail that blazes the trail. Absolutely. And those companies, get acquired by enterprises along the way, gobble them up along the way.
Yes.
And very interestingly too, a trend that I'm noticing now that generally happens in these valleys of this industry is there's a new, I'll call it project, It's called TokenVest, that actually is Scott Thiel's new project. And Scott Thiel was at DLA Piper, and Ian Putter has left Standard Bank and has joined TokenVest. So there also is this like inverse effect that we see commonly in the technology industry of people leaving established companies to start and form startups to enter that front of the pack.
Absolutely.
And many times getting reacquired by their own company. We saw this with Steve Jobs and different things. So there's these movements happening.
Well, because if you're in an enterprise team and you're pushing the company strategy, you don't have that agency usually to do the things that are cool. You have, and you know what, when you're in an enterprise, you have clients who are like, we need this token product, and nobody's building it. Can you build it? And that person goes to the enterprise and they said, well, we've got clients that want this product. Can we do it? And they're like, we don't have that sort of thing on our roadmap. We can't do it. But if you spin out and you launch your own thing, we'll support you, right? It might not be in an official capacity, but they'll provide the help, because they're, enterprise people are just people, right? They're just part of the team. They might not be able to help you as a company, but they could help you personally. They could get you set up with the right contacts, and you start your company, and now you're out the door with some developers and maybe some money because you get some seed capital. And now you're doing TokenVest with your buddies from your enterprise job, but you're in a startup, right? And this is good. This is how, like, they're coming from a high friction environment, and they're moving into low friction where they can build. And that's what a startup, that's the strength of a startup, is you're not buried by bureaucracy and legal and all of this kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about, like, if the bigger that HashPack gets, the more that we have to think about, well, if we make a mistake on the legal side, we are now risking billions of dollars of funds. When we were at 6 months into the thing, and we were just selling, not selling, but doing a wallet for friends, the most that people could lose was in like a few 10,000s, 100,000s. And yeah, at the time that was huge. But you come in and everybody understands that they're going to take a risk, and you kind of know, because it's a small community, that if it does happen, at least you did your best and people understand that. But as we move up, it gets slower and slower to make these big changes. We have to make a lot more decisions based on the potential risk, and that slows us down. And so you multiply that by 100 to an enterprise that is one of the Fortune 500s, and no wonder they can't move quickly, because if something screws up on the token side, that could have rippling effects across the whole organization. So startup a startup, and then as a community, make sure you support them, right?
Yes.
Hey, you were at this GC. That's fantastic. And you're doing this now. Let's learn about you. Let's get you into the community. Let's invite you into Discord and Twitter Spaces. Let's get excited about your project and help you out, right? That's what the energy that we should see, because you know what? Then the next enterprise guy who has an idea might just come and join our community too.
I love that. And I think you hit on something really important where, the fact is we're all just people, and being in business, it's like, generally, if you're in a risky industry, you want to work with people that you know. And you want to go into areas that everyone is really trying to mitigate that risk. And I think that's when we look at the question that's commonly raised in Hedera, which is like, well, why is Starbucks building on Solana, or why is this project doing this on Ethereum?
Yeah.
It's really what it comes down to is the people steering the ship at these enterprises, when they want to push forward one of these initiatives and they need to figure out what networks to build on, they're going to build on the network that the Web3 guy in the CTO's office recommends, or they're going to build on the network that the board is invested in or whatever.
Sure.
And that is kind of like the secret sauce here is, what can we do to connect with those people, right?
We actually are. I would say, like, so many times we've heard that there are projects that are in big companies that have those decision makers that are really excited about Hedera, really excited about Hedera, and they're going to their teams and they're saying, "Hey, we need to build on this network, not Polygon, not Solana or whatever, because Hedera is where it's at." And then the board or their boss or whatever that they report to are like, "Okay, but what the heck is Hedera? I don't know about this. Do your research, give me a presentation, and get back to me." And in the meantime, we've got like 3 other people over there that are familiar with Solana or whatever, and they've got more users and more money, so doesn't that make more sense? And the guy's like, but Hedera, and they keeps pushing it, right? I've seen this so many times, and sometimes the Hedera guy actually gets some traction and they start trying to build, and that's where you see some of the bigger projects that have been in the background that people are excited about. They come out of that kind of enthusiasm. So it's not that we don't have it, we have it. It happens everywhere, right? So one day maybe we do land on Nike or an Adidas or something like that, right? There are people who are like just in the marketing side that have worked with these giant brands, and it's just a matter of when do the roads meet up and we can push something for that brand in the Web3 space and recommend Hedera, and they'll go for it, right? The potential is there.
Oh, 100%. And that's a great point. I think it's clear that stuff is happening, and where my brain goes is like, how can we make more of that happen? And I think that's where the loop comes together of what we're talking about today is highlighting these things and getting that access, getting these HTS listings and growing that visibility and growing that footprint. That's what makes it easier for those tastemakers and advocates inside of those enterprises to say, look at this, like, look at all this stuff happening. And I think that that's really what we can make happen is what can we do to connect with those tastemakers, embrace this community, and then again, give them that firepower to, pack their presentation for their boss and say, look at all of this incredible stuff. And you're right. We're on track for that. And I think that that's really when we loop back into this conversation about opportunity cost. It's like, you've done such a great job of highlighting the opportunity right there. And then the question comes back onto Hedera and the governing council and organizations to go, what can we do to supercharge this? What can we do to get this ecosystem, as Rob Allen would say, fit for purpose? And what is the purpose? And I think that now that we're really drilling things down, that's, I think, where you and I get that kind of really optimistic sense from, is like, okay, now we're, as the kids say, cooking, you know what I mean? Like, now we got some stuff going on. And maybe what I would say is, from a project perspective, you as the CEO of HashPack, and thinking about trends, something I often bring up in the conversations around like, we need change, is I try to remind people that, last summer, the governing council put out a committee to find a new president, right? And Charles Atkins was brought on. And as you've highlighted, there's a lot of faith being put in Charles. And I think that there's a lot of positivity. And I think it's totally reasonable for a year to go by of trying to figure out what the new strategy looks like and kind of put something in place. And the signals, right. Yeah. And and I think psychologically, and all the signals we've been receiving is, and people have said this either on the governing council or in projects, is like, this next 6 months for Hedera really is the make or break time. And I feel pretty optimistic. And from your perspective, I would maybe say, as someone deeply embedded in the ecosystem, through these next 6 months, what do you kind of see happening? Like, what do you feel is going to, get us there? What do you like? Do you feel really, really confident in what this new plan could look like? And do you really, how much, this is the other question, is as we push more towards aligning with retail, do you think there's going to be backlash from certain HBAR holders of like, no, we don't want retail, almost like these kind of anti-retail HBAR holders,
I think let's do the last one because that's easy first. You're always going to have backlash. People are passionate and they have ideas of how things are supposed to be, and they have things that they like and they have things they don't like. So I think just knowing that there's going to be different voices and just saying, like, everybody's opinion is valid, even if I don't agree with it, but at least I'm going to listen and I'm going to then go and do my thing. Like, there's no need to kind of get upset about people and argue with them on their viewpoint when you could just be focusing on your thing. And those guys who are focused on their HBAR holdings and stuff, and that's how they want to, that's where they think success is going to be, they can go off on that path. And people who are doing the retail side, they can go off, or the DeFi side, they can go off on that path, right? You don't need to waste your energy on things that you can't change. And I think that this is also my answer to the first part of that question, which is, okay, so Charles is here and we have a lot of faith in him to do what we need on the Hedera side and on the Swirl side and on the GC side. And that is a world that we as community have never been a part of in the history of Hedera. And you know what? It might not even be important to be a part of it as long as the leadership is good, right? Like nobody cares about the leaders if they're doing what you need to do.
Right.
But like there are lots of positive things that we can do to change things, like open up dialogues, get in conversations, get the UGC more involved or more aware of what's going on in retail. But that's not something that we can change. And so the only thing that I can do with Charles is, talk to him every so often when I can, or tweet at him with something positive or something that I think he should know. Not tweet at him saying, why haven't you gotten results?
Right.
Because like, is that really gonna ever help? Or like you said you were working on this 3 months ago and we haven't heard anything. Well, you know what? Probably because he's still working on it. But it's not gonna, like, pointing that out to somebody why you haven't done your job isn't really going to help, and it's going to cause a little bit of unhappiness. And you don't really have, as a community member looking in, you don't really have the optics of what's happening. So instead of holding people accountable like that, hold them accountable by trusting that they're going to do what they can, but giving them the information so that they can perform their job. And this is something that we as a community have agency over. We have the ability to start talking about the things that are important to us, the things that we think are good, the things that we think are excited about. And yes, there's also things that we're critical about that we should also bring up, but bring it up in a constructive way. Absolutely. And then as we move forward into the next 6 months, you say it's make or break. I think that every 6 months is kind of a make or break, like we're a startup culture, we're Web3 culture, we're leading edge tech. We can't sit around and twiddle our fingers. We have to move, we have to build. And if you don't, you end up just petering out and, becoming a bystander. So we have to move. We have to do things as an ecosystem. And I've never felt stronger about that, I guess. So maybe the next 6 months are make or break. Certainly we want to hit this next bull market whenever it hits, though we'd have no control over it. So if we have no control over it, there's no point in getting upset about it, in my opinion. So what can we change? What do we have control over? We have control over our sentiment, our mood. We have control over how we present ourselves to the outside world. We have control over the projects that we're building and the projects that we're supporting. And we have control over our relations with ourselves as a community, and leaning on each other, working together, collaborating, and just making sure that everybody is moving together in the same direction. I think that the more that we can do to unite the community, to get people involved and like use their passions and engage with people, I think the stronger our community will be, and we will outpace other L1s for sure, because we've got a really, really solid base here. So as a community member, if you're building, then just build the best thing that you can and get people excited about what you're building. And if you are not a builder and you're just here because you love the community, you love Hedera, find things that you're excited about and just spread that, and then find friends who you want to talk to about it, and make a little community yourself and talk to people about that. And like I think it's going to be much more rewarding than raging on Twitter about the latest scandal, if you take that approach as a community member. So